Have you ever dreamed of planting your garden a single time and then harvesting fresh food from it year after year without constantly replanting every season? Imagine walking outside at the beginning of summer and seeing your garden wake up naturally on its own. Fresh shoots rising through the soil, familiar plants returning, leaves unfolding in the sunlight, and harvests beginning again, all with very little effort from you. That's the incredible advantage of perennial edible plants. In this video, we're exploring 10 amazing perennial crops that you can plant once and continue harvesting for many years. These aren't complicated or exotic plants. They're dependable, productive, beginner-friendly crops that thrive in home gardens, backyard spaces, and even small suburban yards. Once established, many of these plants become easier and more productive with every passing season. So sit back, relax, and picture a garden that practically feeds itself, returning year after year with less work and bigger rewards. 1. Blueberries, productive bushes that can feed you for decades. Blueberries aren't just another fruit bush. They're one of the best long-term investments you can make in a food garden. A healthy blueberry plant can remain productive for 40 to 60 years, producing reliable harvests every single summer once mature. Although young bushes may take a few seasons to fully establish themselves, the long-term rewards are extraordinary. One reason blueberries are so popular is because they're surprisingly resilient when planted in the right conditions. Their biggest requirement is acidic soil, usually with a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. Once they have the proper soil environment, they become relatively low-maintenance plants. Mature bushes handle cold winters well, tolerate periods of drought better than many fruits, and naturally resist a number of common garden pests. With occasional pruning and a healthy layer of mulch, they continue producing year after year with very little trouble. But blueberries provide more than just delicious fruit. In spring, the bushes become covered in delicate white or pale pink flowers that attract bees and pollinators into the garden. As summer arrives, clusters of berries slowly ripen from green to dusty blue. Then in autumn, the leaves transform into fiery shades of red, orange, and crimson, making blueberry bushes just as ornamental as many decorative shrubs. For better harvests, many gardeners recommend planting at least 2 different blueberry varieties together. Cross-pollination often improves berry size, sweetness, and total production. By combining early, mid-season, and late-producing types, you can enjoy fresh blueberries for weeks instead of just a short period. Blueberries adapt well to raised beds, containers, or traditional garden rows. Since their roots stay relatively shallow, mulch becomes especially important because it helps preserve moisture and maintain the acidic soil they prefer. Over time, the bushes become fuller, stronger, and increasingly productive. Another reason people love blueberries is their incredible nutritional value. They're packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and natural compounds associated with heart health and brain function. Having a constant supply of fresh berries just steps from your home can completely change the way you eat during harvest season. Many gardeners are surprised by how productive mature blueberry bushes eventually become. What starts as a small plant can later provide bowls of berries every week during summer. Extra harvests can be frozen, dried, baked into desserts, or turned into homemade jams and sauces. Blueberries also fit beautifully into edible landscaping designs. Instead of separating food crops from ornamental plants, blueberries allow you to combine both. They look elegant throughout nearly every season while quietly producing one of the healthiest fruits you can grow. And perhaps the most satisfying part is this. Once blueberry bushes become established, they continue rewarding you for decades. A single planting today may still be feeding your family many years into the future. 2. Raspberries, the self-renewing berry plant that keeps expanding. Raspberries are famous for their vigorous growth and their ability to return bigger and stronger every year. Once planted, they naturally spread underground, produce new canes, and slowly develop into a large, productive patch with surprisingly little effort from the gardener. What makes raspberries especially interesting is their unique growing cycle. Each cane typically lives for 2 years. During the first year, the cane focuses on leafy growth. In the second year, it produces fruit and then eventually dies back. But while older canes fade away, the root system constantly sends up fresh new shoots to replace them. This ongoing cycle allows raspberry patches to renew themselves naturally season after season. There are 2 primary raspberry types gardeners usually grow: Summer-bearing varieties produce one large crop during early or mid-summer. Ever-bearing varieties, sometimes called fall-bearing raspberries, can produce fruit twice, once in late summer on new canes, and again the following year on the same canes. Many gardeners prefer ever-bearing types because they provide a longer harvesting period with very little additional work. Another major advantage of raspberries is adaptability. They thrive best in full sun but can still tolerate partial shade, making them suitable for many different garden conditions. Although they appreciate fertile soil, they're often far more forgiving than people expect. They also handle cold winters extremely well and bounce back quickly after difficult weather. With simple care like occasional pruning and regular watering, raspberry plants reward gardeners with huge amounts of sweet, flavorful fruit rich in antioxidants and vitamins. In fact, many people are shocked by how much fruit a mature raspberry patch can produce. Once established, harvests often become large enough for fresh eating, freezing, jams, desserts, sauces, and sharing with neighbors. Over time, raspberries naturally spread into dense colonies. New shoots emerge from underground roots every season, gradually expanding the patch farther each year. This means even a small initial planting can eventually turn into a highly productive food source that continues growing stronger over time. Another reason raspberries are loved by home gardeners is how quickly they begin producing, compared to many fruit crops. While fruit trees may require years before offering serious harvests, raspberries often reward gardeners much sooner. This fast productivity makes them especially satisfying for beginners starting their first edible garden. Raspberries also create beautiful seasonal interest in the landscape. In spring, fresh green shoots appear rapidly. During summer, clusters of berries hang beneath the leaves waiting to ripen. And in autumn, the canes and foliage begin changing as the plant prepares for another cycle of growth. Some gardeners even use raspberry rows as living borders or natural screens, because mature patches become thick and lush. Birds and pollinators are also attracted to the flowers and fruit, helping create a lively and active garden environment. One thing to keep in mind is that raspberries appreciate airflow. Proper spacing between rows helps reduce disease problems and keeps harvesting easier. Many gardeners also install simple supports or trellises to keep canes upright once heavy fruit begins developing. And perhaps the best part of growing raspberries is how generous they become over time. A few simple plants can eventually provide baskets of fruit year after year with minimal effort. Once established, raspberry patches almost feel alive with momentum, constantly renewing, spreading, and producing season after season. 3. Horseradish. The hardy perennial root with incredible staying power. Horseradish is one of those rare plants that practically takes care of itself once it's planted. This bold, spicy root has been grown for centuries and remains one of the easiest perennial food crops for home gardeners today. Known for its fiery flavor and intense aroma, horseradish is commonly used in sauces, marinades, meats, and homemade condiments that need a sharp, powerful kick. What makes horseradish especially dependable is its powerful underground root system. After becoming established, the plant spreads beneath the soil and returns every spring with fresh green growth. Beneath the surface, thick white roots continue storing energy season after season, allowing the plant to survive difficult conditions and come back even stronger. These roots are the part most people harvest, and their flavor becomes even more intense after exposure to cold autumn temperatures. Frost actually improves the pungency, giving late-season harvests a richer and sharper taste. Another reason gardeners love horseradish is because of its toughness. It tolerates freezing winters, summer heat, poor soil, drought, and inconsistent watering far better than many vegetables. Even if ignored for long periods, horseradish often returns without any problem. In fact, many gardeners joke that growing it is easy. The difficult part is stopping it from spreading too much. Since the plant expands underground, it's best grown in a permanent location where it has room to stay for years. Garden edges, dedicated beds, or isolated corners of the yard usually work best. If planted too close to delicate vegetables, horseradish can slowly compete for space as its roots spread outward beneath the soil. The harvested roots can be grated fresh for homemade horseradish sauce, mixed with vinegar to preserve flavor, or added carefully to recipes that need extra heat. Even a small amount delivers a surprisingly strong flavor. Some people also use the leaves in cooked dishes, although the roots remain the plant's main attraction. One of the greatest advantages of horseradish is how little work it requires compared to the rewards it provides. Once established, it becomes a dependable long-term crop that keeps returning year after year with almost no maintenance. Another fascinating thing about horseradish is how deeply its roots penetrate into the soil. This helps the plant survive difficult weather while also loosening compacted ground over time. In a way, horseradish not only feeds the garden but also improves the soil structure beneath it. The plant's large green leaves also create an impressive appearance during the growing season. Even people unfamiliar with horseradish are often surprised by how lush and tropical the foliage looks once summer arrives. This means the plant can serve both practical and ornamental purposes at the same time. Many homesteaders and survival gardeners value horseradish because it's so dependable. While annual vegetables may fail during difficult weather or neglected seasons, horseradish often survives and continues producing regardless. That resilience makes it one of the most reliable perennial food sources available, and perhaps that's what makes horseradish so special. It asks for very little, survives almost anything, and quietly keeps producing bold, flavorful harvests for years without demanding much attention at all. 4. Perpetual spinach, a never-ending supply of fresh greens. Perpetual spinach is one of the most productive leafy greens you can grow in a home garden. Despite the name, it isn't actually true spinach. It belongs to the chard family, but its flavor and texture are so similar to spinach that most people use it exactly the same way in cooking. The major difference is longevity. Unlike traditional spinach, which quickly bolts in warm weather and often needs constant replanting, perpetual spinach can continue producing for 2 or even 3 years straight. For anyone who regularly cooks with leafy greens, this plant can become incredibly valuable. It works beautifully in salads, soups, smoothies, stir-fries, pasta dishes, and sautéed meals. Because it grows rapidly and recovers quickly after harvesting, it provides a nearly continuous supply of fresh leaves throughout much of the year. Harvesting perpetual spinach is very simple. Gardeners usually pick the outer leaves while leaving the center of the plant intact. This allows fresh leaves to continue developing from the middle almost immediately. Within a short time, the plant is ready for harvesting again, creating an ongoing cycle of production without needing to reseed constantly. One reason perpetual spinach is so popular is because it's far more forgiving than many traditional greens. It prefers sunlight, well-drained soil, and regular watering, but it tolerates heat much better than ordinary spinach and can also handle light frost. In areas with mild winters, it may continue producing through colder months, providing fresh greens when many other vegetables have stopped growing. Its durability makes it especially attractive for beginner gardeners or anyone wanting a low-maintenance food crop. Traditional spinach often requires careful timing because it bolts quickly in warm weather. Perpetual spinach removes much of that frustration by staying productive for much longer periods. This plant is also highly valued in permaculture gardens because it consistently provides nutrition with minimal input. Once established, it becomes a reliable food source that requires very little effort beyond occasional watering and harvesting. Many gardeners appreciate how compact yet productive perpetual spinach can be. Even a small planting can provide enough greens for regular household meals. Because the plant keeps regenerating after cutting, a few healthy plants may produce surprising amounts of food over time. Another hidden advantage is how quickly perpetual spinach bounces back after harvest. Some leafy greens become weak after repeated cutting, but perpetual spinach often responds by producing even more fresh growth. This continuous renewal makes it feel almost endless during the growing season. The leaves themselves remain tender and versatile in the kitchen. Younger leaves work beautifully raw in salads, while larger leaves hold up well in soups, casseroles, and cooked dishes. Having fresh greens available just steps outside the door can completely change how often people cook with nutritious vegetables. And perhaps the best thing about perpetual spinach is its simplicity. Plant it once, care for it lightly, and it keeps rewarding you month after month with fresh, healthy harvests. Few garden crops offer so much food for so little effort. 5. Asparagus, a vegetable that can produce for decades. Asparagus is often considered one of the ultimate perennial vegetables, and for good reason. When you plant asparagus, you're not just growing food for one season. You're establishing a crop that can continue producing for 20, 30, or sometimes even more years with proper care. The secret behind asparagus lies underground. Instead of shallow seasonal roots like many annual vegetables, asparagus develops deep crowns that store large amounts of energy beneath the soil. These underground reserves allow the plant to survive freezing winters, drought, and changing weather conditions while returning every spring with fresh growth. Throughout winter, asparagus remains dormant underground. But as temperatures begin warming in spring, tender green spears start emerging from the soil, often much earlier than many other vegetables. These young shoots become one of the very first harvests of the gardening season, providing fresh food while most of the garden is still waking up from winter. However, asparagus does require patience in the beginning. During the first 1 or 2 years, gardeners are usually encouraged not to harvest heavily. These early seasons are important because the plant needs time to establish strong crowns and store enough energy for future production. Although waiting can feel difficult, the long-term payoff is enormous. Asparagus performs best in full sunlight and rich, well-drained soil. Since it remains productive for decades, it's important to choose a permanent location carefully. Once established, asparagus dislikes being moved, so gardeners often dedicate a long-term bed specifically for it. After establishment, asparagus becomes surprisingly easy to maintain. Occasional mulching, watering during drought, and trimming dead growth at the end of the season are usually enough to keep plants healthy and productive for many years. The reward for that patience is remarkable. Mature asparagus beds can produce large harvests of tender spears every spring, with very little effort from the gardener. Over time, the patch often becomes more productive rather than less. Another reason asparagus is so valuable is its nutritional quality. The spears are rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber while remaining low in calories. Freshly harvested asparagus also tastes dramatically different from store-bought versions, often sweeter and more tender. During summer, asparagus plants transform completely. Instead of edible spears, tall fern-like foliage rises above the garden, creating soft green texture and helping recharge the underground crowns for next year's harvest. This seasonal transformation gives asparagus a unique appearance compared to most vegetables. Many gardeners describe planting asparagus as planting for the future. It's the kind of crop that rewards patience, consistency, and long-term thinking. A single planting can continue feeding families for decades with surprisingly little maintenance once established. And perhaps that's why asparagus remains one of the most respected perennial vegetables in gardening. Few crops offer such a long-lasting return from a single planting. 6. Jerusalem artichokes, the nearly indestructible root crop. Jerusalem artichokes, often called sunchokes, are among the toughest and most productive perennial food plants you can grow. Despite being overlooked by many gardeners, they're one of the easiest crops for producing huge harvests year after year with very little maintenance. Sunchokes belong to the sunflower family, and their appearance makes that relationship obvious. During the growing season, they shoot upward into tall, leafy stalks that can easily reach 6 to 10 feet in height. By late summer, bright yellow flowers begin blooming at the top, making them resemble smaller wild sunflowers swaying in the garden. But the real treasure grows underground. Beneath the soil, Jerusalem artichokes produce clusters of knobby tubers with a mildly sweet, nutty flavor. Many people describe the taste as something between potatoes and water chestnuts. These tubers are highly versatile in the kitchen and can be roasted, boiled, steamed, stir-fried, fermented, or even eaten raw for extra crunch. One of the most remarkable things about sunchokes is how aggressively they reproduce. Even a tiny piece of tuber left behind in the soil can grow into a completely new plant the following season. Because of this, they truly live up to the phrase, "plant once and harvest forever." Due to their vigorous growth, it's usually best to plant Jerusalem artichokes in a designated area where they have room to spread. If managed properly, they remain highly productive without becoming unmanageable. Their resilience is extraordinary. Sunchokes tolerate drought, poor soil, freezing winters, summer heat, inconsistent watering, and general neglect far better than most garden crops. Very few edible plants can survive difficult conditions as easily as Jerusalem artichokes. This toughness makes them ideal for beginner gardeners, low-maintenance gardens, homesteads, and survival food systems. Once established, they often continue thriving almost entirely on their own. Another hidden benefit is how much biomass the plants produce. Their tall stalks create privacy, wind protection, and visual screening during summer, while also attracting pollinators when flowers appear. Many gardeners are shocked by the sheer amount of food a single planting can generate. Since the tubers multiply underground every year, Harvests often become larger with time instead of smaller. And perhaps that's what makes Jerusalem artichokes so impressive. They ask for very little, survive almost anything, and continue producing huge amounts of nutritious food season after season with almost no effort at all. 7. Strawberries, the sweet perennial that expands on its own. Strawberries are often treated as annual crops in large-scale farming, but in home gardens they behave very differently. Once planted, strawberries act as productive perennials that continue returning year after year, while naturally spreading and renewing themselves over time. What makes strawberries especially fascinating is the way they reproduce. Mature plants send out long, thin stems called runners. At the end of each runner, a brand new strawberry plant begins forming. Once it touches the soil, it develops roots and becomes another productive plant. As this process repeats season after season, the strawberry patch gradually expands on its own into a larger and more productive system. This natural renewal process keeps the patch healthy. Older plants eventually slow down, but younger plants continuously replace them, allowing the entire bed to remain productive with surprisingly little effort from the gardener. Basic care like watering during dry weather, adding mulch for winter protection, and removing dead leaves in spring is often enough to keep strawberries thriving for years. And the reward is incredible. Few garden experiences compare to eating a strawberry freshly picked from the plant. Warm from the sun, sweet, fragrant, and bursting with flavor. Homegrown strawberries often taste dramatically better than store-bought berries because they can fully ripen naturally before harvest. Fresh strawberries can be eaten directly from the garden, frozen for smoothies, turned into jam, baked into desserts, or added to breakfast dishes. Even a small patch can provide an impressive amount of fruit during the growing season. Gardeners usually choose between two main strawberry types depending on how they want to harvest. June-bearing varieties produce one large, heavy crop early in the season, making them perfect for preserving and large harvests. Ever-bearing varieties produce smaller amounts continuously throughout the growing season, offering fresh berries over a much longer period. Many gardeners combine both types to enjoy both abundance and consistency. Another reason strawberries are so popular is their adaptability. They grow successfully in raised beds, containers, hanging baskets, vertical planters, and traditional garden rows. As long as they receive plenty of sunlight and good drainage, strawberries usually perform extremely well. Over time, strawberry patches often become denser, healthier, and increasingly productive. What begins as a few simple plants can slowly turn into a lush carpet of green leaves, white flowers, and bright red fruit that returns every single year. The flowers themselves also add beauty to the garden. Before berries appear, strawberries produce delicate white blooms that attract pollinators and create a soft, ornamental effect throughout the bed. Watching tiny green berries slowly turn bright red is one of the most satisfying parts of growing them. Another hidden benefit is how quickly strawberries produce compared to many fruit crops. Unlike trees or shrubs that may take years before delivering harvests, strawberries often reward gardeners relatively quickly, making them especially satisfying for beginners. And perhaps the most remarkable thing about strawberries is how naturally self-sustaining they become. Once the patch is established, the plants quietly continue spreading, renewing, and producing sweet harvests season after season with surprisingly little work required.